Grace tucked her worn jacket tighter around her shoulders as the autumn wind swept through. Riverside Park. She had claimed her usual bench near the fountain, the one partially hidden by overgrown bushes where people rarely bothered her. The morning sun painted everything in shades of gold, and for a moment, she could almost forget the rumbling in her stomach and the ache in her bones from another. Night on the streets, she watched the world move around her. Joggers in expensive sneakers, women pushing designer strollers, businessmen barking into phones. They all seemed to exist in a different universe, one where Grace had stopped belonging 3 years ago. When her mother died and the bills piled up faster than she could count, a burst of laughter caught her attention. A small boy, maybe 6 years old, was chasing pigeons near the fountain. His dark hair flopped over his eyes as he ran, arms outstretched like airplane wings. He wore a crisp blue shirt and tiny loafers that probably cost more than Grace had spent on food all month. Something about his joy made her smile despite everything. The boy ran faster, spinning in circles, completely lost in his game. Grace saw it before anyone else did. His foot caught on the uneven pavement where tree roots had pushed through the concrete. He went down hard, his small body hitting the ground with a sickening thud. Grace was on her feet before she could think. Her legs, stiff from sitting, protested as she hurried across the path. Other people had noticed too, but they hesitated, whispering to each other, pulling out phones to record rather than help. Grace pushed past them and dropped to her knees beside the crying child. Blood trickled from a scrape on his forehead. His palms were scratched raw, bits of gravel embedded in the skin. Tears streamed down his flushed cheeks as he gulped for air between sobs. "Hey there, sweetheart," Grace said softly, keeping her voice calm. "You took quite a tumble, didn't you?" The boy looked at her with wide, frightened eyes. Up close, she could see they were a striking gray color, rimmed with thick lashes. He nodded, his lower lip trembling. "I'm Grace. What's your name?" "Oliver," he whispered, then louder, "It hurts." I know it does. "Can I take a look?" She waited for his nod before gently examining his hands. "You're very brave, Oliver. These are warrior wounds. Do you think you can stand up if I help you?" He nodded again. Grace carefully pulled him to his feet, steadying him when he wobbled. She noticed his shoelaces had come completely undone, trailing on the ground like defeated ribbons. "Can't have you tripping again," she said, kneeling down. "Let me fix these for you." As she tied his shoes with practiced efficiency, a shadow fell over them. Grace looked up to find a man standing there, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than a used car. His gray eyes, so like Oliver's, were fixed on her with an intensity that made her want to look away. "Daddy!" Oliver cried, reaching for him. The man swept the boy into his arms, holding him close while examining the scrapes. "You scared me, Allie. I turned around for 1 second, and you were gone." His voice was deep, with an edge of barely controlled panic. "I fell," Oliver said, his tears starting fresh. "But Grace helped me. She's nice." The man's gaze shifted back to Grace, who had stood up and taken a step back. She was suddenly very aware of her dirty jeans, her threadbare jacket, the way her hair probably looked after sleeping on a bench. "Thank you," he said, and his voice softened. "I'm Benjamin Turner. Ben. You were the only one who actually helped him, Grace," she managed. "Anyone would have done the same, but they didn't." He looked around at the dispersing crowd with something like disgust. "You did. Look, please, let me buy you breakfast or lunch. Something. It's the least I can do." Grace shook her head automatically. "That's not necessary. I'm just glad he's okay." "Please," Benjamin insisted. Oliver had stopped crying and was watching their exchange with interest. "Ollie wants to thank you properly, too." "Don't you, buddy?" "Yes." Oliver said immediately, "Please come eat with us, Grace. Do you like pancakes?" Something in Grace's chest cracked at the hope in the child's voice. She hadn't had pancakes in longer than she could remember. "I love pancakes." Benjamin's face broke into a smile, transforming his serious features into something warm and approachable. "Great! There's a diner just 2 blocks from here. The Bluebird. Their pancakes are legendary." Grace found herself walking between them, Benjamin adjusting his stride to match hers, while Oliver held her hand. chattering excitedly about his favorite foods and the bird he had been chasing. People stared as they passed, their eyes moving from Grace's shabby appearance to Benjamin's obvious wealth. Questions written plainly on their faces. The Bluebird diner was warm and bright, smelling of coffee and maple syrup. The waitress, an older woman named Betty, greeted Benjamin like an old friend before her eyes landed on Grace with poorly concealed surprise. "Table for 3. Betty," Benjamin said smoothly, as if nothing was unusual. They slid into a corner booth, Oliver insisting Grace sit next to him. He kept up a constant stream of conversation while they waited for food, telling her about his school, his best friend Jason, the dog he wanted but couldn't have because his dad worked too much. "Ollie," Benjamin said with gentle exasperation. But he was smiling. Grace found herself relaxing despite her discomfort. Oliver's enthusiasm was infectious, and Benjamin had a quiet kindness about him that put her at ease. When the food arrived, huge stacks of fluffy pancakes drowning in syrup, Grace had to blink back unexpected tears. "Are you sad?" Oliver asked, his face concerned. "Oh, honey, just really happy about these pancakes." They ate together, and conversation flowed easier than Grace expected. Benjamin asked careful questions, never pushing, never making her feel judged. She learned he was a widower, that Oliver's mother had died 2 years ago, that he ran some kind of manufacturing company, but tried to be home for Oliver as much as possible. "It's not enough, though," Benjamin admitted. Watching Oliver draw pictures on his napkin with crayons Betty had brought over, "He needs more than I can give him alone." Grace didn't know what to say to that. As they finished eating, Oliver's eyelids grew heavy. He leaned against Grace's shoulder, his small body warm and trusting. Benjamin watched them with an expression Grace couldn't quite read. "I know this is going to sound strange," Benjamin said slowly, "but would you consider working for us? Taking care of Oliver?" Grace nearly choked on her water. "What? I've had 5 nannies in the past year. Oliver doesn't connect with any of them. But he trusts you. I can see it." Benjamin leaned forward, his eyes serious. "I'm not making this offer out of pity, Grace. I'm making it because my son needs someone who sees him, really sees him. The way you did today? You don't know anything about me," Grace protested, even as hope fluttered dangerously in her chest. "I know you helped a child when no one else would. I know you're gentle and kind. I know my son feels safe with you." Benjamin pulled out a business card and wrote something on the back. "This is my address. Think about it. Come by tomorrow if you're interested. We can discuss details." Grace took the card with trembling fingers. It felt like holding a lottery ticket, too good to be true. That night, as she lay on her bench staring at stars barely visible through city light pollution, Grace turned the card over and over in her hands. She thought about Oliver's trusting smile, Benjamin's steady gray eyes, the promise of a roof over her head, and purpose in her days. By morning, she had made her decision. The Turner estate took her breath away. Tall iron gates opened onto a circular driveway, flowering gardens stretching in every direction. The house itself was massive, all glass and stone and elegant lines. Grace almost turned around 3 times before finally pressing the intercom button. "Yes." A woman's voice crackled. "I'm here to see Mr. Turner. He's expecting me." Grace, pause. "Come in." Benjamin met her at the front door, Oliver bouncing excitedly at his side. "You came," he said, and his relief was evident. "I came. Then welcome home, Grace." Grace woke up in a real bed for the first time in 3 years. The morning light filtered through cream-colored curtains in her small room near the back of the house. It was simple but clean, with its own bathroom and a window overlooking the garden. She still could not believe this was real. The first week passed in a blur. Grace learned the morning routine quickly. Oliver needed to be up by 7, dressed by 7:30, breakfast at 8. Benjamin left for work early, but always made time to have coffee with his son before heading out. Grace stood back during these moments, not wanting to intrude on their time together. Oliver attached himself to Grace like a shadow. He wanted her to walk him to the bus stop, help with homework, play games in the afternoon. She read him stories before bed, her voice soft in the dim light of his room. Sometimes Benjamin would stand in the doorway listening, a small smile on his face. The household staff consisted of Martha, the housekeeper who had worked for the Turners for 15 years, and James, who managed the grounds and did repairs. Both were polite but distant at first, clearly unsure what to make of Grace. She could not blame them. By the second week, things began to shift. Grace found her rhythm. She started helping Martha with small tasks without being asked. She learned that Oliver loved grilled cheese cut into triangles, that he did his homework better with soft music playing, that he still had nightmares about his mother sometimes and needed someone to sit with him until he fell back asleep. Benjamin noticed everything. He would come home from work and find them in the garden, Grace pushing Oliver on the swing while the boys shrieked with laughter, or in the kitchen, both of them covered in flour from attempting to bake cookies. The house felt different now, warmer somehow, more alive. One evening, after Oliver had gone to bed, Benjamin found Grace in the kitchen making tea. "Thank you," he said simply. Grace turned, surprised. "For what?" "For giving him his childhood back. He smiles now." Really smiles. Benjamin poured himself a cup of tea and sat at the counter. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. Why were you on the streets?" "You don't have to answer if you don't want to." Grace was quiet for a long moment. "My mom got sick. Cancer. I took care of her for 2 years. Spent everything we had on treatments that did not work. After she died, I could not keep up with the debts. Lost the apartment. Lost everything." She stared into her tea. "I had some family, but they made it clear I was on my own. So that's what I became." Benjamin's expression was pained. "I'm sorry. Don't be. I survived. And now I'm here." Grace met his eyes. "You and Oliver saved me just as much as I helped him that day." Something passed between them in that moment, something neither was quite ready to name. The calm shattered on a Tuesday afternoon. Grace had just picked Oliver up from the bus stop when she saw him. Derek stood across the street, leaning against a lamppost with that familiar smirk on his face. Her stomach dropped. Derek had been part of her street life, someone who claimed to look out for her but really just used her when it was convenient. She had cut ties with him months before meeting Benjamin. But Derek was not the type to let go easily. Grace hurried Oliver inside and told Martha she needed to run an errand. She met Derek 2 blocks away in a coffee shop parking lot. "Nice setup you got," Derek said, looking her up and down. "Living in a mansion now? Playing house with some rich guy?" "What do you want?" "Just catching up with an old friend." His smile did not reach his eyes. "You know, I've been having a tough time lately. Could use some help. Maybe $5,000 to start. I don't have that kind of money." "But your boss does. I'm sure he wouldn't mind helping out." Derek stepped closer. "Unless you want me to stop by the house? Have a chat with him about the good old days." Grace felt sick. "Stay away from that house. Stay away from them. Then get me the money. You have 3 days." Derek walked away, hands in his pockets, whistling. Grace made it home before the panic fully set in. She locked herself in her bathroom and tried to breathe. Everything she had built was crumbling. If Benjamin found out about Derek, about the things she had done to survive on the streets, he would ask her to leave. She could not blame him. He had Oliver to think about. Over the next few days, Grace tried to act normal, but Benjamin noticed. He always noticed. She jumped at sounds, checked the windows constantly, seemed distracted when Oliver talked to her. Then Patricia Turner arrived. Benjamin's older sister swept into the house on Friday afternoon wearing designer clothes and an expression of disapproval. She was elegant and polished, everything Grace was not. Her cool blue eyes assessed Grace in seconds, and the verdict was clear. "So you're the charity case my brother hired," Patricia said, not bothering to lower her voice. "Patricia," Benjamin's voice was sharp. "That's enough, is it? Do you have any idea who this woman really is? Where she comes from?" Patricia turned to Grace. "Have you told him about your past? About the people you associated with?" Grace felt the color drain from her face. How did Patricia know? "I did some checking," Patricia continued. "Made some calls. Imagine my surprise to find out the woman caring for my nephew used to panhandle on street corners, that she has a criminal record." It was one arrest for trespassing, Grace said quietly. I was sleeping in an abandoned building. They let me go. Benjamin looked between them. Patricia, you had no right to investigate Grace. Had every right. You're so desperate for help with Oliver that you brought a stranger into your home. Someone shows you a little kindness, and suddenly you forget basic common sense. Oliver appeared at the top of the stairs, his small face confused. Why is everyone yelling? The fight went out of Grace. She could not do this to Oliver, could not have him witness this ugliness. I should go. Grace, no, Benjamin started. But she was already moving. She went to her room and packed the few belongings she had accumulated. Her hands shook as she folded clothes, placed books in a bag. This had all been too good to be true anyway. People like her did not get happy endings. There was a soft knock. Benjamin stood in the doorway, his face strained. Please don't go. Your sister is right. You need someone stable for Oliver. Someone without my kind of baggage. I need someone who loves my son. Someone he loves back. Benjamin stepped closer. Whatever happened in your past, it doesn't matter to me. It should. Grace's voice broke. Derek found me. He's demanding money. If I don't pay, he'll make trouble. I can't put you and Oliver through that. Benjamin was quiet for a long moment. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was afraid you'd look at me differently. Like I was still that person sleeping on benches, doing whatever it took to survive. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I'm sorry. Don't apologize for surviving. Benjamin reached out and gently wiped her tears. Let me help you. Let me handle Derek. Can't just throw money at him. He'll keep coming back. Then I'll deal with it another way. Benjamin's jaw set in a determined line. I have lawyers, resources. We'll get a restraining order. Whatever it takes. But please, Grace, don't run. Not from this. Not from us. Grace wanted to believe him so badly it hurt. What about Patricia? Patricia doesn't live here. She doesn't get to decide who stays or goes. Benjamin took Grace's hands in his. You belong here. Oliver knows it. The only question is whether you know it too. Grace looked at their joined hands, then up at his face. She saw no judgment there, no disgust, only steady certainty in something else. Something that made her heart race. I want to stay, she whispered. Then stay. Patricia left the next morning in a cloud of expensive perfume and lingering disapproval. She made her opinions clear before going, telling Benjamin he was making a mistake, that he was thinking with his heart instead of his head. Benjamin showed her to the door and did not argue. Some battles were not worth fighting. Grace expected things to go back to normal after that, but they did not. The incident with Patricia had shifted something. Benjamin worked from home more often. His office door opened so he could hear Oliver and Grace laughing in other rooms. He joined them for lunch, helped with homework, read bedtime stories. The careful distance he had maintained began to dissolve. Derek showed up 2 more times. The first time, Grace saw him from the window and called Benjamin immediately. Benjamin went outside alone and had a conversation Grace could not hear. Derek left, looking angry, but did not return for several days. The second time, Benjamin was ready. He had already filed for a restraining order and had his lawyer present documentation of harassment. Derek took one look at the lawyer and disappeared. Is he gone for good? Grace asked that evening. People like him move on to easier targets, Benjamin said. He knows you're protected now. Protected. The word settled something in Grace's chest. Oliver thrived. His teacher called to say his grades had improved, that he participated more in class, that he seemed happier overall. At parent-teacher conference, the teacher smiled at both Benjamin and Grace. Whatever you're doing at home, keep it up. Oliver talks about Grace constantly. He clearly adores her. In the car afterward, Oliver fell asleep in the back seat. Benjamin drove slowly, taking the long way home. He's not the only one, he said quietly. Grace turned to look at him. What? Who adores you? Benjamin kept his eyes on the road, but his hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. I've been trying not to say anything. Trying to be professional, to give you space. But Grace, I can't pretend anymore that you're just Oliver's caregiver. You're so much more than that. Grace's heart hammered in her chest. Ben, you don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know. He pulled into the driveway and turned off the engine. I know the situation is complicated. I'm your employer. There's a power imbalance. If this makes you uncomfortable, we can forget I said anything. Grace reached over and took his hand. It doesn't make me uncomfortable. Benjamin looked at her then, really looked at her, and what she saw in his eyes made her breath catch. No, no. Grace squeezed his hand. I feel the same way. I have for a while. I just didn't think someone like you could want someone like me. Someone like you? Grace, you're the strongest, kindest, most genuine person I've ever met. You loved my son before you knew anything about me or my money. You see us? Really see us. Not what we have or what we can give you. Benjamin lifted her hand and kissed her knuckles gently. I haven't felt this way since Elizabeth died. Honestly, I wasn't sure I could feel this way again. They sat in the car, hands clasped, while Oliver slept peacefully in the back. It felt like the beginning of something new, something neither of them had expected but both desperately needed. The next few weeks passed in a warm glow. They were careful around Oliver at first, not wanting to confuse him, but the boy proved more perceptive than they realized. At breakfast one morning, he looked between them and announced, "You should get married." Grace choked on her orange juice. Benjamin laughed. Allie, that's not how it works. Why not? You like each other. Grace already lives here. You smile all the time now. Oliver counted on his fingers. Jason's mom got married again, and he got a new dad. Can Grace be my new mom? Grace felt tears prick her eyes. Oliver, would you want that? Oliver asked, his gray eyes so hopeful. To be my mom? I would be honored, Grace said softly. But these things take time, sweetheart. How much time? Benjamin reached over and ruffled his son's hair. How about we start with me, taking Grace on a proper date first? Okay, where are you going? Can I come? No, buddy. This one is just for grown-ups. Oliver considered this. Fine, but you have to bring her flowers. Jason's mom says that's what boyfriends do. Their first date was simple. Dinner at a quiet Italian restaurant, conversation flowing as easily as wine. Benjamin told her about his late wife, how they had been college sweethearts, how her death had nearly broken him. Grace shared more about her mother, about the guilt she still carried for not being able to save her. You gave her everything you had, Benjamin said, reaching across the table for her hand. That's not something to feel guilty about. That's love. As weeks turned into months, Grace found herself settling into a life she had never imagined possible. She was not just Oliver's caregiver anymore. She was part of the family. Martha warmed to her, teaching her family recipes and sharing stories about Oliver as a baby. James built Oliver a treehouse and let Grace help, patiently showing her how to use the tools. Patricia even came around eventually. She visited one afternoon and found Grace helping Oliver with a school project while Benjamin cooked dinner. The easy domesticity of it seemed to soften something in her. I was wrong about you, Patricia said later, pulling Grace aside. I thought you were taking advantage. I see now that you love them. Really love them. I do, Grace said simply. Then I'm sorry for how I treated you, for not seeing what Benjamin and Oliver saw from the start. It was not a grand apology, but it was genuine, and Grace accepted it. 1 year after that day in the park, Benjamin took Grace back to the same bench where they first met. Oliver was with them, holding a small box and practically vibrating with excitement. This is where it all started, Benjamin said, taking both of Grace's hands. This is where I watched you choose kindness when no one else would. Where I saw the person you are, not the circumstances you were in. Grace, you brought light back into our lives. You made our house a home. I don't want to spend another day without you in it. He knelt down, and Oliver handed him the box. Will you marry me? Grace looked at Benjamin kneeling before her, at Oliver dancing with excitement, at the bench that had once been her bed and was now the place where her new life began. Yes, she whispered, then louder, yes. Oliver cheered. Benjamin slid the ring on her finger and stood, pulling her into his arms. He kissed while Oliver made exaggerated gagging sounds that quickly turned into giggles. The wedding was small, held in the garden where Grace had once felt so out of place. She wore a simple white dress, flowers in her hair. Oliver stood beside them as ring-bearer, taking his job very seriously. Martha cried. Patricia smiled. James took pictures. As Grace and Benjamin exchanged vows, she thought about how life could change in an instant. How one choice to help a crying child could lead to this moment, this family, this love. She thought about her mother and hoped somehow she knew that her daughter had found her way home that evening. After Oliver had finally been convinced to go to bed, Grace and Benjamin stood in the garden, under a sky full of stars. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her head. "Any regrets?" he murmured. Grace thought about cold nights on park benches, about hunger and fear and loneliness. She thought about Derek and Patricia and all the obstacles they had overcome. She thought about Oliver's trusting smile and Benjamin's steady presence in this family they had built from broken pieces. "Not a single one," she said, turning in his arms to kiss him. "This is exactly where I'm supposed to be." For the first time in her life, Grace truly believed it. She was home.